Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between, welcome to another episode of the Jake Botel Sports Experience. Here to discuss another week of championship hurling in 2022. This week, we're going to have a look at what occurred in the Munster, Leinster, and Joe McDonough Cup finals. If you'd be so kind as you watch along, hit that subscribe button. It helps me grow the channel and sends good vibes your way. So it's a win-win. All right, so lots of action to get to across these three games. We're going to start with the Joe McDonough Cup final between Antrim and Kerry, played at Croke Park on Saturday, the 4th of June. It was all one-way traffic across the first 20 minutes. It was Antrim that had the best of it, smashing in 2 goals into Kerry's net to take a 2-8 to 0-4 lead. Across those first 20 minutes, they were too strong, too fast, too skilled. Kerry's backline, in particular, looked as if its feet were stuck in the turf as the Saffron County ran riot over them. They were just running across the top of the ground. Antrim, which is a weird saying, but there you have it. The gap was stretched out to 12 points, and at that point, I thought the game was under serious threat of being all over after just 22 minutes. Kerry having registered just the 4 scores in 22 minutes. Conal Cunning for Antrim had 7 points inside the first 7 minutes. But Kerry finally created something. Their best look at goal resulted in a penalty, which Podge Boyle stepped up to drive high into the top right corner of the net to give his team some life before half-time. He almost had 2 in a matter of minutes when he drove a shot wide of the far post. So Kerry started to work their way back into it, and it was as though Kerry had suddenly settled, perhaps, into the occasion, and they realised, we're up for it. We're up for this game. They were still rushing a few shots, made a few skill errors when they had probably more time than they thought, but there was more of a sense of urgency and creativity and aggression from the Kingdom. But just when they had hauled themselves back into it, Antrim kicked away again. Forward thrust resulted in a good save from Kerry's keeper, but that save only nudged the ball out in front of an Antrim forward who flicked home another goal, their third of the half, and Antrim rolled to a 3-14 to 110 lead at the end of the first half. I was pretty concerned that this was going to be just a massive blowout in favour of the Saffron County, that we weren't going to get a decent contest. But Kerry were up for it after half time. Despite Antrim starting the stronger of the two teams, Kerry really needed a goal if they were to bridge the gap, but it was Antrim that had the ball in the back of the net for the 4th time on the afternoon. It was Cunning beating the keeper in a foot race to the ball, flicking it beneath him into the net to make it 4-16 to 1-14 after 40 minutes. Absolute beaut of a save from Antrim's keeper Ryan Elliott on 47 minutes to keep the ball out of the net, low to his right off Shane Conway. I think it was Shane Conway. However, Elliott couldn't keep the ball out of the net a couple of minutes later. Conway skidded a shot low and to the left into the net to reduce the margin to just 5 points, kind of unbelievably. And it was Conway who reduced the margin to just 3 points with 16 minutes left when he pounced on his own deflected shot to ram a ground strike high into the net. So this game that Antrim had dominated, all of that first half, there were times in the first half we thought it was all over after about 25 minutes. Kerry had suddenly unbelievably closed the gap to just 3 points with quarter of an hour left. So the gap was reduced to 2, and Antrim won a penalty when Neil McManus was pulled from behind. It was a foul that saw Poddy O'Connor, I believe it was, sent from the field for a spell on a black card, and it resulted in a 5th goal for Antrim as the Schlitter rocked into the net. 10 minutes to go, 5-point margin. I was wondering if Kerry could mount a comeback, and it was really back and forth in those last 10 minutes and into injury time. Kerry were able to close that gap to 3, but Antrim always able to find an answer to extend their lead out to 4. It was Podge Boyle who struck a remarkable long goal to claw the gap back to 1 point right at the death. But as soon as that ball went into the back of the net, the final whistle went, and that was the end of the game. Really heartbreaking end, really, for Kerry to have come so close at the end. Antrim winning this match 5-22 to 4-24. As I mentioned, it was Connell Cunning 112, Clark with 2 goals, 2, and McNaughton 1-1. They were the top scorers for Antrim. For Kerry, it was Boyle 211. What a performance. Conway with 2, 2, and Collins with 3. And I had to give my man of the match to Connell Cunning. He just stood up across the afternoon. Obviously very hot early, 7 points I think it was in the first 7 minutes. And that really set a tone. He came up with a crucial goal, to push Antrim's lead back out. I believe that was the one at the start of the second half it was. So I couldn't go past him. If Kerry had got up, you were looking at Podge Boyle with 211 himself. The full scorers for the match for Antrim, you had Cunning 112, Clark 2-2, McNaughton 1-1, Elliott with a goal, 2 points each to Malloy and McManus, and 1 point each to McKenna, McKernan, and O'Neill. For Kerry, it was Boyle 211, Conway 2-2. It was Collins with 3, 2 points each for Lean. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I'm probably not, knowing my form. Conway 2, Mackesy 1, Dooley 1, and 2 O'Connors with 1 point each. So what's next for these two teams in Championship Hurling? Well, you've got Antrim, the Saffron County. They can look forward to spending 2023 in the Leinster Hurling Championship at the expense of Leash. But more importantly, in the short term, they now head for a massive All-Ireland preliminary quarter-final clash at home in Corrigan Park against Cork. So massive game coming up for the Saffron County, and they can look forward to playing top-tier hurling in 2023. For Kerry, it's another season in the Joe McDonough Cup for the Kingdom in 2023 after a painful loss in the final, but they have more hurling to play yet this season, at least one more game. It's back home now to Austin Stack Park to host Wexford in a do-or-die All-Ireland preliminary quarter-final matchup. So that's how that game went down. That's what's ahead for those two teams. So with that out of the way, let's have a look at the Leinster Hurling Final. So the Leinster Hurling Final was played between Galway and Kilkenny at Croke Park, Saturday the 4th of June. And this match was an interesting one. I actually felt, just going back on the Antrim Kerry game, it was interesting. Ridiculously high scoring, 522 to 424 or whatever it was. 9 goals and over 40 points. But it was quite a sloppy game. There was not a lot of, really great defending. I didn't think there was a lot of, it was a fun game to watch, but not that real tight contested hurling you might have liked to see. I really enjoyed Galway and Kilkenny. It didn't rise to the heights, perhaps, of another game we'll talk about to end this episode. But it was tough. It was gritty. There was plenty of defence to like about this. Plenty of contested hurling down in Croke Park. Kilkenny very willing to use the short ball, I noticed, particularly early, to adjust the angle and open up a player in a better position. A lot of short puck outs to a defender who would then take the long ball. It wasn't just a long puck out from the keeper. It was give it short to a defender and let him create the next play. Galway really making a push for goal, I noticed, on 2 occasions in the first 10 minutes. Kilkenny's backline working overtime to crowd those chances out. And it was Owen Murphy who made a great save to keep one of those out of the net. And it was something that really struck me as this game wore on, that Galway were clearly chasing goals in that first half. Kilkenny, I was going to say almost Limerick-esque. Not quite, but there was this feeling that Kilkenny were happy to take their points decisively, shoot from long range. If the chance was on, they were going to take it. Yes, of course, you always want to create goal-scoring chances, but Kilkenny were very systematic, I thought, in comparison to Galway in how they were taking their scores and happy to rack them up, point by point. Galway really having to work hard and do special things to score up forward, while there was a simplicity to the way Kilkenny were able to stack up a score. Galway, there were so many brilliant individual efforts, just to get a point on the board, where it all felt a little more elementary, I guess, for Kilkenny. But there was this clear storyline for me that Galway were obviously chasing 3-point scores in that first half. But at halftime, it was only 9-11. And I did have the thought of, well, maybe you could have just taken those points, when you had that thrust into the opposition forward third. Um, Obviously, there's that saying that, you need goals to beat Kilkenny. But maybe in this match, Galway didn't necessarily need goals in that first half to beat Kilkenny. Perhaps, on those two or three, forward thrusts where they were attempting to get a goal. If you take your point, they trailed by 2 at the half. But I don't know. I just thought there were times where maybe they were overly goal orientated, when maybe just taking the point would have allowed them to close that gap on Kilkenny a little more. Take your scores, make Kilkenny perhaps chase goals at the other end. Because I thought Galway's defenders were really mauling Kilkenny's forwards whenever Kilkenny tried to get that ball deeper to go for the goal chance on the few occasions they did it. I think it was Finton Burke and Dahi Burke as well, who both were winning so much ball out of the back line for Galway. So it was 9-11 at half time. The first 10 minutes of the second half were a bit of a shootout, teams trading points on 4 occasions. The defending in this game shows that it's not only the scores, to me, that we wanted to see. We want to see close, competitive matchups. As I said, there was an entertainment factor to Antrim and Kerry, but I really liked watching a lower scoring, defensive, contested sort of slugfest between these two sides, where there wasn't a lot of space to operate in. Owen Murphy sort of continued to cover himself in glory. Another good save off a tamer sort of shot from Connor Whelan. Something I've noticed with him, and I suppose all goalkeepers strive to do this in all sports, but Murphy's so good at positioning himself between the posts. Like, he covers his angles so well. I used to goalkeep a bit in soccer, and that's such a key part of the game. People want to look at all the the fancy saves you make, the dives or whatever it is, but just simple things like maintaining good angles to close down shooting space, and that Owen Murphy does that so well for Kilkenny, and it served him well in this game. TJ Reid, I thought, was back in some peak form on the freeze, really reliable, whereas, he has maybe looked a little bit rusty across the championship so far. Well, I felt like he really stepped to the fore in this game. Come the big game, the big player steps up. I thought there was sloppy sort of discipline from Galway in this game. That was a real contrast for me. Like, Kilkenny weren't doing anything absolutely spectacular. They were classic Kilkenny in that they were doing the basics quite well, the fundamental things. They weren't giving away a lot of silly frees. I thought Galway sometimes, leaving the arm high in a tackle, giving Kilkenny sort of pressure relieving frees down back, or else scoring opportunities up forward. In a game that really was, coming down to slim margins, discipline, or lack thereof, seemed so important. And Kilkenny were just working harder, smarter, for longer, taking their opportunities with a real decisiveness is the word that would come to mind for me for Kilkenny in this game. Systematic and decisive, the two phrases. Whereas Galway, a little bit more sporadic, perhaps, moments of brilliance and then sort of head-scratching moments at times. So in the end, Galway kept coming. Kilkenny kept, sort of staving them off, holding them off at arm's reach. As soon as Galway reduced the margin to a 3-point lead in the final minutes of injury time, it was Kilkenny that responded with back-to-back points. And that was really all she wrote. Kilkenny winning 22 to Galway 17. For Galway, the top scorers, it was Connor Cooney with 9 points, Whelan 4, Fahy with 2. For Kilkenny, it was TJ Reid with 12 points, 12 of 22 for TJ Reid. Really spectacular stuff from him. It was Mullen with 4 and Deegan with 2. I've named TJ Reid my man of the match. I just think he scored over 50% of his team's scores. He was reliable on the freeze all day at a time where, Galway would have loved someone of his consistency, I suppose, to step up on their side. And that was really a massive difference for Kilkenny, was that TJ Reid was back to being, almost automatic on the frees, whereas Galway had their struggles at times across the afternoon. With that, the full scorers for you for Galway, just the 5 guys getting on the score sheet. That, I suppose, is a little bit concerning for Galway. You had Connor Cooney with 9, Whelan 4, Fahy with 2, Burke with 1, and Mannion with 1. For Kilkenny, you had 7 scorers for them. TJ Reid with 12, Mullen 4, Deegan 2, Ryan, Keown, Lahi, Walsh, all with single points. What's up next for these two sides? Well, Galway, it's a week off for them, for Henry Shefflin's team. They look to lick their wounds and right the wrongs of their loss to Kilkenny. The next time they take to the field, it will be a loser goes home All-Ireland quarterfinal matchup with the winner of Cork and Antrim. They'll look to tidy up, I think, some of the sloppiness and loose discipline that seemed to cost them at critical times against Kilkenny. I think that's something they'll probably work on, in my opinion. For Kilkenny, well, after a satisfying Leinster hurling triumph over an old foe, Kilkenny can now theoretically put their feet up for a couple of weeks while they await the next results of championship hurling. Not that a Brian Cody coach team will ever put its feet up. The Cats are just one more win away from an All-Ireland final spot when they play whoever emerges from the Wexford, Kerry, Clare side of the quarter-finals bracket. So that is Joe McDonough Cup final. That's Leinster Hurling Championship final. Let's have a look at the Munster Hurling Championship game between Clare and Limerick. Played at Thurles on Sunday, the 5th of June. What an absolutely unbelievable second act in the championship between these two fierce rivals. It's quite difficult to summarize all of it, really, but let's give it a go for you. So they were packed in like absolute sardines at Thurles. Brilliant atmosphere. The game was so hot across the whole thing. Just fierce pressure. Clare were on pace early. They got 3 points while Limerick took 8 minutes before they registered their first score. Not long after that, though, Limerick have scored the next 4 in a row and they're up 4-3. And you start to think, well, are Clare going to start being, rocked back on their heels here? Well, not at all. The banner went straight up the field, tied it up. And I really got the feeling at that point, these two sides have just picked up where they left off a few weeks ago in that one, it was at 24-121 draw down in, was it Limerick or Ennis? I can't remember, whichever one it was. It was just like, we stopped a few weeks ago and it felt like no time had passed. They just picked up right at the same pace, the same skill level, the same ferocity, and just a magnificent game. Tony Kelly, one moment that stood out to me, he hooks Garrod Hegarty on the wing defensively, picks up the ball, races away with the ball balanced on his hurl, eventually puts it over the bar on the run without ever putting it to hand, just flicks it up with the hurl and puts it over the bar. Just an absolutely magical score that just shows that the type of hurler he is, the defensive effort, the counter-attack, and just the magical finish. And you think, he turned around and fist pumped to the crowd, and the Clare fans did an absolutely amazing job trying to will their team over the line in this game. And I thought there were so many moments where you think, well, the challenger has really thrown down the gauntlet and maybe we're going to see Limerick rocked. But after that Tony Kelly point, Limerick responded immediately, just straight back up and a point over the bar. There's something I thought, a note I made was that Clare, to me, and I think I brought it up on a previous episode, they're the perfect blend of skill, speed, grit, fire, and belief. And that belief comes in that form of where you see some teams go up against Limerick, the dominant hurling power of the time, and they almost get conservative. They're trying not to get beaten by Limerick, perhaps. They're trying to come up with with game plans to, strategically, or how can we limit the influence of Limerick? And while I'm sure there are plenty of defensive game plans for Clare when it comes to playing Limerick, what I love about them is that they don't go into their shell. They come out and they have, in both of these championship hurling games, it's fighting fire with fire. We are not going to back down. Claire saying, we are not going to back down. We are not going to let you boss us around. We are going to go head to head with you physically, in terms of pace, skill, dare, aggression, creativity, all of that. We are just going to come right at you and see if we can knock you off your perch. After Limerick had taken that 4-3 lead, Clare then outscored Limerick 8-4 to surge out to a 3-point advantage near the 25-minute mark. And I thought, again, the challenger. Are we finally going to see someone get a break on Limerick, and how will they respond? Will Limerick respond how you would think they would respond? It was Geroid Hegarty displaying magnificent skill. A different type of hurler to Tony Kelly, but no less magical to watch. Took a hand pass off Tom Morrissey. Now, Tom Morrissey with the catch off the deep ball, and then the hand pass out of traffic to Geroid Hegarty, who bounced it over the head. So he got, caught the ball on his hurl, flicked it, sort of bounced it back up over the Clare defender to his left, got back onto the ball, and lashed a shot into the far side of the net to level the game at that point at 12-19. That was near the half-hour mark. Tony Kelly launched a free from inside his own half to level the game right on half-time. And it was like, let's have a breath. Because we packed, enough high-level hurling into those first 35 minutes as we do some weekends. I sort of felt it was almost too much to take in. Just, there were so many things to look at. So Clare went in on 14 points. Limerick won 11. So it was all tied up at 14 at halftime. Clare came out after the half. They scored the first point. Limerick missed, I believe it was 5 wides before they leveled the game up. The tackling and pressure from Clare was just immense. Limerick not getting any time on the ball. I noticed that the skills perhaps weren't as clean in the early part of the second half, but the physical intensity had increased. There's sort of a twisting feeling to the game that as each minute sort of passed, the tension ratcheted up another notch as this game sort of spun towards a conclusion, and you could sort of feel the players becoming more and more tightly wound as this game wore on. Tony Kelly, just so slippery. There's one point where he's able to wriggle free of pressure, find space where there seemingly was none, and put it over. David Fitzgerald, another player for Clare who I thought played an absolute blinder of a game, storming through the middle and putting points over when his team needed him to. Tom Morrissey as well. I feel like he's been a player really looking just to tick off across almost the whole championship, where it's like, I'm just trying to hit myself back into form. You can see it's not quite connecting right for him. But in this game, I thought you saw it all click back together. It was like he'd worked his way through a rough patch, and he came up with some really crucial assists and scores himself. I thought Tom Morrissey looked back to some of his best hurling, from my vantage anyway. Limerick had a 2-point lead when Seamus Flanagan put another point over the bar. Seamus Flanagan was excellent as well. I'll talk a little bit more about him later. And at that point, it was 117-18 with a quarter of an hour to go. So Clare down by 3 points. I'm wondering, do they have enough juice left for another run at the champs? They do indeed. They went back to back to level it up on the hour mark, and it was Peter Duggan who gave them the lead with 8 minutes to go. This was an insane game. Limerick missed a lot of shots, I thought, across this game, and particularly in these patches where, Clare are up and about. Clare hit the front, and then Limerick missed some shots, and you're just going, is this going to come back to haunt them? But it didn't. Aaron Galland stepped up, a beautiful shot back across his shoulder to level it up with 5 minutes of regulation left. Seamus Flanagan put them 1 point ahead shortly thereafter, and Gallen stretched that Limerick lead to 2 points with another beautiful shot back across his shoulder in the 66th minute. So 4 minutes to go, and Limerick are up by 2. The sides had been level 13 times in this game. So the question was, could Clare do it for a 14th time? Yes, they can. Peter Duggan delivered on back-to-back frees to tie the score at 23 apiece with 90 seconds left in regulation. Minute and a half, and your mind is blown by this game. So we get to additional time, and there's 3 minutes of additional time added. Limerick gained sideline cut. Geroid Hegarty steps up to take it, but that ball resulted in nothing. Jimmy Burns launched a towering score from his own half from play, and Limerick gained a sideline ball just seconds later. And with 60 seconds on the clock, Clare trailing by a point, and with Limerick in possession, I really thought the game was done then. I thought Limerick are going to see this out, but they got a sideline opportunity themselves, which was basically the last play of the game. Tony Kelly steps up to take it, and he levels the game. He leveled the scores at halftime. He levels it at the end of the game, and the scores are tied, and we go to extra time. It's just an insane one of the more astounding games of any sport that I've watched. And there's a bit of a bust up between the two teams as they go down to the tunnel at the same time into their dressing rooms. I was wondering if maybe Limerick's goal threat would prove decisive in the end. Could that, maybe they find one more 3-point score in extra time to finally kick away. But really, Aaron Gallen and Seamus Flanagan were the ones who did the damage early in extra time. It was Gallen who opened the scoring in absolute pissing rain. The rain was coming down. Seamus Flanagan doubled that advantage with his 7th point, delicately feathered over the bar a few minutes later. And I thought that Clare started to look a little sloppy coming out after the mini break. And I was wondering maybe had Limerick finally worn them down. Clare's forward play had looked so systematic at the start of this match, and slowly across the game, I suppose, to me, became more broken down. Not to a completely ineffective level, but they were so clean early on, so decisive, so good at taking their chances, whereas Limerick that struggled early. But Limerick, once they got going, really, it felt like they maintained this almost metronomic ability to just grind out points when they need them. Gallen scored his 9th point, and the Green Machine were 3 points up after 6 minutes. David Fitzgerald came out of the back, rode a hit, put the ball onto Tony Kelly, who settled Clare with a beautiful point. But the Bannock County still went into halftime in extra time, trailing by 2 points, 124 to 25. Aaron Gallen inexplicably missed a gimme of a point early on in this final period of play. David Fitzgerald didn't return the favour. He narrowed the score to a single point with a beautiful dashing point from the sideline. Seamus Flanagan put the lead out to 2 points again for Limerick, only for Tony Kelly to slash it back to 1 from close range. Connor Boylan came through, lanced a beautiful point over the bar on the angle, and that stretched the gap to 3 points for Limerick with less than 5 minutes to play. And you started to feel a little desperation for Clare as Limerick sort of chugged along. The banner sort of felt like maybe they've run out of fuel here. Limerick showing no sign of slowing. They made it 4 points. And that, to me, felt like the knockout punch when they put it out to 4 points in extra time in the second half. David Fitzgerald was yellow carded. You could see some frustration perhaps boiling up now for a Clare team that had given an absolute shot to Limerick. But my God, Limerick, they just seem like an insurmountable landscape at the moment, an impenetrable landscape to these challenges. Clare managed to reduce the gap to 3 points a couple of times in those final minutes. But it's Limerick. Again, they find answers every time. They win this game 29 to 129. They win it by 3 points. So the goal does prove decisive in the end. You had to admire the heart, effort, skill and commitment from Clare. But Limerick are like a steam train to me, a green machine in every sense of the word. Once they find that groove, they're so hard to shake off their tracks. It's just relentless. They're so fit, so unflappable, so skilled. I mean, obviously the best team in the country, and I guess we'll find out across the next month if anyone can get close to unseating them. But their ability to run out this game, you could see as it wore on, Clare finally started to wear down a little bit. The skill level reduced a little bit, but Limerick, it's like they just find these extra gears as the game goes on, and players step up and absolutely fair play to Clare. They have given this Limerick team absolutely everything in this match and the drawn game in the pool matchups. But you have to wonder what that leaves you feeling as Clare. Like, my God, we have absolutely thrown the kitchen sink at this team. And it's like Limerick can just absorb, and then counter-strike. They are an unbelievable team to watch. And so are Clare. Credit to them as well. Like, this really did feel like a game between perhaps the two best teams in the competition. Time is going to tell. Time will prove out. We'll see how Clare bounce back from this loss. We'll see what Limerick look like in the semi-final. But Limerick, the winners on this day, 129 to Clare, 29 points. Tony Kelly, 13 points for Clare. Fitzgerald, 5. Duggan, 4. For Limerick, Aaron Gallan with 10. Flanagan with 8. And Garrod Hegarty with a goal. I made Seamus Flanagan my man of the match. I thought, Gallan took a little while to get going, to work his way into the game. But Flanagan was such a reliable and consistent threat for Limerick across the whole day. And it's not just his own scores, it's the scores that he sets up. So I gave Seamus Flanagan my man of the match. Thought he was very, very impressive. The full scorers for you in this matchup, there were plenty of them. For Clare, it was Tony Kelly with 13, Fitzgerald 5, 4 for Duggan, 3 for Taylor, 2 for Rogers, 1 each to Galvin and Meehan. For Limerick, my goodness, an absolute laundry list of scorers. Gallan 10, Flanagan 8, Garrod Hegarty with the 1 goal, Tom Morrissey 3, Cahill O'Neill with 2, singles each to Burns, Hannon, O'Donovan, Boylan, Reedy and O'Donoghue. So that was the full list of scorers there for Limerick. What is up next for these two teams? Well, Clare gave it absolutely everything against Limerick for the second time in a month, only to come up painfully short. They get 1 weekend off to get their bodies right and make any sort of adjustments they feel need to be made ahead of an All-Ireland quarter-final matchup against the winner of Kerry and Wexford. There was some talk that maybe Tony Kelly looked like he was getting some work on the sideline late in that game. But I don't know if that's, it's a long game. They played, a full match and another 20 minutes. So that may just be a case of some cramp or whatever. I don't know. I haven't seen any sort of news on it yet. So I guess you'll just be watching that space of Tony Kelly's health going into this next matchup. For Limerick, well, the green machine rolls on. They've earned themselves safe passage through to yet another All-Ireland semi-final. That means 2 weekends off now for this Limerick team, with the ability to reset mind and body ahead of a Final Four matchup against whoever emerges from the Cork, Antrim and Galway side of the bracket. Now, if you ask me, another edition of Limerick Cork could be a really juicy semi-final. Once more with feeling, but we'll see how it all shakes out there. All right, that's all the games from this weekend reviewed. So what's up next for the hurling? We have two preliminary quarterfinal matchups. Kerry v Wexford, Saturday 11th of June at Austin Stack Park. We've also got Antrim v Cork, also on the Saturday the 11th of June at Corrigan Park. I'm not sure if I'll get to do a recap of these games because neither of them are being broadcast on GAA Go, which is my subscription service that I watch games on. So I guess I'll have to try and find another way to watch these matchups if they're being streamed somewhere. Perhaps if you want to point me in the right direction in the comments, maybe you can help me out here. So if I can watch these games, there'll be a recap episode next week. If not, maybe I'll do a preview episode of the quarterfinals or something. to tide you over. So for now, that's all. If you could hit that subscribe button, I'd much appreciate it. I'll send some good vibes your way. Until next time, guys, thanks so much for watching.